Welcome back to the Opposition Podcast number 26. Rukshan, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good, Avi. I've had a clean shave. I've got some
Look,
lights happening. There's a few complaints about my lack of,
effort.
professionalism, perhaps.
Effort was the word you're looking for. A
Eff-
lot,
Effort in my setup. So I've actually
not just your
cleaned
setup,
myself up a
in,
little
in,
bit.
in your personal hygiene. A lot of people making complaints,
Well,
and I'm glad to
yes.
see that you're taking it seriously, mate.
But no, yeah, I am taking it seriously, and
You've got to
it's good
put
to be
effort
back.
into this show. Otherwise, we're going to have to. I don't know. I get it. You're a DEI hire, but there's other brown people looking for jobs.
That's right. That's right. So I want to make sure that I prove myself as a worthy DEI hire because these days DEI, of course, is going out of fashion. So I've only got a few, I guess, strikes left before I'm completely out of this show.
Well, I'm super excited for this episode, like I am every single episode. But I feel like every time I like the Thursday nights. It's kind of coming towards the end of the week, so I'm feeling like the weekend's coming, which
Yeah.
means that there's probably going to be a protest that I need to cover. So I get excited. Um, but I'm super excited about tonight's guest. We'll bring her in, let her introduce herself. Katherine, welcome to the Opposition Podcast. Now, for those who don't know your work, firstly, shame on them because you're an absolute champion. But who are you? What do you do?
My name is Catherine. I sort of rose to national prominence, I suppose you could say, during the 2022 election when I ran against Sally Stegel for the Liberals in Warringah. But I have been very vocal on the particular issue of women's sex-based rights. So whether that's sports, spaces, language, and the intrusion of men who wish to pretend to be women and come into those spaces. But more broadly, I'm a lawyer by trade. I have a show on ADHTV every week called Talk Straight, where we cover topical issues. And yeah, just continuing on speaking, common sense, really. And these days that gets you into a lot of trouble.
Well, it's not that common anymore. What law do you practice, or did you practice?
So I still practice, mostly litigation. So I'm have been the instructed solicitor on the Tickle versus Giggle matter. That is the big matter that I'm looking after. I've also looked after Louise Elliott, who got into trouble down in Hobart for hate speech and vilification accusations, and I also assisted a couple of the women who were caught up in the rally that was gate crashed by Nazis down in Melbourne, which I
Well, we'll
believe.
talk about that in a minute because there was
Mm,
another rally was gate crashed by
yeah.
Nazis, but a very different outcome. That's on our list of issues to talk about. I do fancy myself a bit of a lawyer. I reckon if I was born, if I can go through it all again, I would come back as a barrister because I just love arguing, and my little experiences inside of courts has been mostly fun. Outside of the one court system, the family court system, I think every other court system was I find it fun. Anyways, so just some house rules for people watching at home. Now we're going to go. The first at least half is going to be on all the platforms you're watching on now. If you want to comment, the comments that we can bring up at the top of onto the screen, it has to be, what is it? YouTube, uh,
Facebook,
Facebook,
Twitter.
Twitter. There we go.
Yeah.
Um, any of those platforms on any of the pages that you're seeing it on, if you comment, it comes up, and I'm in charge of bringing them up on screen. For
Yeah.
the last 20 minutes or so, we will move over to only free speech platforms because I know how wild Catherine can get. And she's not, no, it's just
No,
that
well,
way.
this is the thing, Avi. Like, Catherine is, she's someone like us who's a political commentator online as well. She's very active on X. And Catherine, you have this skill that me and Avi seem to have as well of just triggering people just by sharing the most basic of facts. Like, I know
Yeah.
during the election campaign, you triggered a lot of people just by speaking common sense. But even on X today, there's a lot of people that obviously come after you just for sharing, obvious truths about, especially around gender-based rights. Like, is that something that you enjoy, the challenge of dealing with these people, or it's just a part of it?
I don't really look at the comments, to be honest, and I'm very prolific with the block. If someone says something rude to me that I wouldn't tolerate in real life, I just block them. So I don't even
Uh,
see if people are making rude comments. And I think you have to for your mental health. You've just sort of got to ignore them.
Yeah, you're like my wife. My wife actually manages the block thing. I don't really block people, but my wife loves it. It's like it's a sense of power I think she has. And she giggles. I know when she's blocked someone because she's got this little giggle. She's like, I've ruined their day. I know how much they want to chat in your comments because they're your biggest fans. Those that are obsessed with you are indeed your biggest fans. So the last 20 minutes, we're going to go only onto free speech platforms, which is Rumble and X. I thought I tried the Telegram one. I think it said it failed. So Rumble or X, or of course the opposition.show. And for the last 20 minutes on those other platforms, if you do, we have started this new concept where we're allowing Rebel Plus members to join in on screen at the end and have a little bit of a chat with myself and Rukshan and potentially the guest if they are still here. That is the opposition.show. Below the video there is a button, but you have to be a member to do that, so we don't get every single crazy who wants to have a go at Rukshan, because everybody
well, I actually don't block anyone. So
he doesn't block anyone. I know.
No, I'm all for their nonsense. So it's quite interesting just letting them go at it and just ignoring them. So I enjoy that.
He does enjoy it. That is Rukshan's. It's been his long-standing way of dealing with them. In fact, I spent the first 3 months trying to get blocked off Rukshan's pages, but he wouldn't do it, Katherine. So.
Well, I think we look at our detractors, and if we didn't have those people, we wouldn't be as well known as we are. I mean, I do have to thank all the trans activists for what they did during the election campaign, for example, because it put the message out there that there was an alternative opinion on that particular issue. If they hadn't said anything, the whole campaign wouldn't have turned into the media circus that it did. So I actually say thank you to the detractors.
I've said that from the beginning, from when I started in this industry, and just, it started with me, just a little microphone, somebody with a phone walking around, and it was the vitriol, it was the hatred, it was their amplification online, sharing the content in outrage that made me who I was. So yeah, there's something to what you're saying. There is a lot in the news tonight, a lot to get through. There's a lot happening. In fact, Parliament at the moment is off its head. I'm going to bring up the other computer. I just realised I forgot to turn.
We should actually tune into Parliament as well for a little bit, because they're still going, right?
We'll see how we go, because there's so much going on. I reckon we'll start with. Let me see if I've got the right button. Here we go. First, let's start with this beautiful little rant. I actually haven't heard it. Let's watch it. This was yesterday. Our close friend who I did invite onto the show tonight. I sent her a message to Lydia. What did I say? I don't want to. I said, I hope you're well and enjoying your time off since you're free. But she didn't answer my text.
I think she's running around the press gallery.
Yeah. Well, she was running around. I think she got kicked out again out of the public gallery today.
If anyone needs to be deported, it needs to be Senator Hanson.
Where would you send her?
A place very, very far away, that's very, very cold, just like her. Where's Hanson's legitimate claim to be in this country? Where'd she come from? Who's her ancestors? So let's talk about Section 44. For the white people who came here on boats, not for the black people who belong here and who are welcome here. Because she's a convicted racist. And that's what racists do. They take up our space to create hate and division in this country. And who wants to reconcile? Who wants a treaty? Who wants peace in this country? We do. It's the racists that are dividing us and creating hate on the streets, in the shops. When you apply for a job, that's what these people are creating. That's why they need to be stopped. Where are they leading us in this country? They talk about harmony, they talk about reconciliation, They talk about bringing this country together, yet they don't walk the talk. They allow racism to continue
Irony of that statement.
to hurt us and everybody else in this country who is not white. What do they want? A civil war in this country? Black and brown people against white people? Is that what you want? Labor? Because that's how we're feeling. We're going to rise from this and we're going to call out racism in the media, in the parliament, and we're not going to stop until we rid it. And people need to understand the white privilege that you hold. Step aside. Move over. Stop speaking. Give us the platform to end racism and take it upon yourselves to do the same.
Yeah.
Reactions.
She's not well. You know, when I look at a woman like that and I think, okay, so you had a great-great-grandmother who was Indigenous and that's pretty much it. And then your whole shtick is just accusing people of racism constantly. I mean, racism wasn't a thing, you know, up until a few years ago. And then all of a sudden it comes back into the zeitgeist. And you look at the word racism, its usage online, and it's really spiked. And I don't think she's adding any value to the political discourse. She's just a disruptor. She's quite happy to sit there taking, you know, the 200,000 plus salary, plus all the perks, Centrelink card, Medicare card, passport, and then, you know, shit all over Australia and complain about it. And I think, I mean, one way we can deal with these people like Lydia, people like Senator Paymon, you know, if they're kicked out of the party and they're in the Senate, that seat should actually go to the next person who was on their ticket. You know, if they are going to remove themselves from the party, or I think she got kicked out of the Greens, that seat should remain with the party. And then we won't get these actors in there who are just causing discord and having tantrums all over the place. If they can't conduct themselves properly, I find it really unedifying that they are senators, they are representatives of our country, sworn to uphold the Constitution, and they're acting like street activists.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very like someone just wrote, she's so cringe. And there is an aspect of that because you expect so much more better behavior from these people within the Senate itself. And the context of all of this is, of course, you know, she's having a go at Senator Hanson for doing something which had included no type of racism from what I can tell. It was very general kind of parliamentary business in terms of what the Constitution requires. And she's just asking a question or a requirement of Senator Paymon to be eligible to sit in Parliament, which many other senators in the past have been put through as well, many other parliamentarians. So to go out there and just act like, just because, you know, it's Pauline Hanson, someone that she doesn't like, and just bring up this entire, you know, thing about racism and how everyone's racist and they're going to fight racism and talk about things like civil war. I mean, I don't think any Australians are out there thinking about a civil war with brown people or Aboriginal people or any other people. Like, we have so many other issues than considering civil war in this country. So I think the rhetoric and the language from her is the incendiary type of language, that she's the one that's actually creating this environment, and it's non-existent until she actually blabbers this crap out. So, you know, besides her behavior, which I think is reckless within Parliament, I think her words to the effect of, you know, Australia has all these issues that are non-existent, as far as I know, is even more dangerous in the long run, because I think there's people that actually might believe her and act on some of these things, you know? So what do you reckon, Avi?
I feel like she just needs to look in the mirror, because pretty much everything she says you can apply to her. Literally everything, word for word. And it's just wild, the irony watching somebody go on about racism, and you always see it from the left. Like they harp on about the exact things that the things that they allege everyone else is doing is them. And, you know, for me, the silver lining since October 7 has been that so many more people are waking up to that, because they've realised that the biggest racists are those who we've known for a few years, are those that run around chanting anti-racism, those that call everyone a Nazi. Now more of the world has woken up to the game they're playing, which is just name calling, but not only name calling. It's almost more annoying, because you are what you say everyone else is. You look at, the protests just this week in Caulfield. That was all anti-racists, anti-fascists. They literally went to a synagogue. They went to a synagogue to protest against Jews. Did you see that one? I still can't get over it. Who told me?
Yeah.
She was standing against anti-Semitism. I was like, what have you got to, you're not Jewish. Like, why are you talking? Her sign was about anti-Semitism. I'm like, how are you talking about anti-Semitism? She goes, yeah, I've experienced it. It's affected me too, because somebody once mistook me as a Jew and threatened to bash me. That was her experience with anti-Semitism as she's standing outside a synagogue rallying against Jews. That is them. That is exactly what Lydia Thorpe does, and that's what so many people have finally woken up to. And I don't think she's doing herself any favors. I feel like Lydia Thorpe wakes up every single morning and thinks, how can I get attention today? What can I do that was more outrageous than yesterday?
Yeah,
No?
agreed with that. Just, throwing around the words racist, sexist, bigot, Nazi, and it diminishes the strength of those words. I mean, now pretty much everybody is a Nazi, and when we look at historically what Nazis are, it takes away from the strength of what that word actually means and what it represents. And then, I mean, you look at the United States, where the Democrats are just saying, oh, well, everybody's sexist, everybody's racist. And you sort of think, if you don't stop and actually prosecute, why those people voted for Trump, you're never going to get back into power. You can't just sit there and call people names. I've always had the view that once you get to the level of calling person a name, of attacking them, of ad hominems, you have lost the argument. You can no longer engage with the substantive matter of the debate, and you've lost.
100%.
And that's kind of what's happening with, I think, Senator Payman, when she stood up, I think that was yesterday as well, and gave that, I don't know what to call it, her speech about the issues that she's, raised against Pauline Hanson. She's not really going to the issues that Pauline Hanson herself has raised. She's just using racism as a shield to stop anyone from talking about, that substantive issue around her dual nationality or her dual citizenship, whatever it is. Let's watch her video.
Let's watch that one.
We'll see it live in action.
And I just got to say this straight up, because I find that she reminds me of that annoying like, I got teenage daughters and I love them to bits, but I hate them as well, because they're just annoying like this. Like, have a conversation with them and it's this kind of, they talk the same as Payman does, and I'm counting down the days till they grow out of it. And
Senator Hanson, why don't you just look at me when you're saying all these things through the chair? Because it's absolutely outrageous that you're going to come to this place to suspend standing orders when we've got an agenda full of important things that Australians want us to do, and instead of representing your constituents through the chair, Senator Hanson is more caught up in the Section 44. You know what? You've worn the burqa, through the chair. Senator Hanson has worn the burqa in this place. Maybe it's time that she pack her burqa and go to Afghanistan and talk to the Taliban about this. Because clearly, when the Labor Party put me up as a candidate, they did their homework. And here it is. Here's the advice, Senator Hanson. Do you want to see it for yourself? Because no, you're in absolute denial.
Just quick one, because wasn't it the Labor Party? How many senators in the last round of Parliament were deemed under that section as unable to be in Parliament? They had a bunch.
Yeah,
I vaguely remember.
It was also the House of Representatives, and Barnaby Joyce got caught up in that. And some of these people actually had to step down, and they had to have by-elections. So for her to sit there and think that she's exempt from Section 44, it should be applied without fear or favour. And I've looked at the documents, and I mean, she's just formed this view that she took reasonable steps. But at the end of the day, the only institution that can decide that is actually the High Court. It's not her. It's not the Labor Party. It's not the solicitor who gave her that advice. It is the High Court. So she should do the right thing, because, I mean, no one, when you look at someone like Barnaby Joyce, I mean, was the Parliament racist against him for making him go and justify his Section 44? I mean, I had to go and get advice when I apply because my grandfather was born in Scotland. I mean, everybody has to do it. And I'm shocked that she thinks that she can get away with it. If she had any respect at all for the Senate and the Constitution, she would refer herself and clear this up. But she won't, because there are questions to be asked. I mean, the Taliban, whatever you might think of them, they are actually a functional government. And I mean, her telling Senator Hanson to go and see the Taliban, I mean, maybe she should. Maybe she should.
And like the idea, like I'm a dual citizen. It's not racist to say to me, if you want to run for the Senate, then you need to lose that. Like I'd have to lose my Israeli citizenship, and I'd have to go through the steps and do it properly, like anyone else. So this idea that you can just smear, it's low hanging fruit, because she knows that her side of politics just jump on it as soon as you say, a white person is racist. It's easy, but Pauline Hanson, that's the easiest, lowest hanging fruit.
Yeah,
is just
exactly.
Go, Pauline Hanson is a racist. And, we had Pauline on, was it last week?
Last week, yeah.
Yeah, I've interviewed her a bunch of times. In fact, I find Pauline Hanson is a lot more tolerant than any of these lefties I've ever met.
And you have to understand, they also went after, I think, Malcolm Roberts with this whole thing as well. So her own party has gone through this process. And for Payman to just say it's racism, I think she's just trying to make it fair and even playing field. Because if this was, like Pauline Hanson has said, if this was someone on the conservative side of politics, Labour and the Greens and even Payman themselves would be throwing their hands in the air saying, yeah, they got to go get to the High Court and all this kind of stuff. So just for her to say that Labour has done the research, I think that in itself should disqualify it.
Exactly. That was my point in the beginning. I'm like, I don't think I articulated it well.
But Labour did the research.
Why are we how is Labour an authority on this? Because you think that's like arguing the criminal who's been locked up for committing a crime, we should trust that he's not going to do it again because he's been caught once doing it. I don't know I don't know. You're a lawyer. I know you don't practice criminal law, but I just can't see any judge following that logic to think that somebody's going to be innocent of a crime just because they've done it before.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, looking at how she's justified, her reasonable steps. I mean, just because she's taken steps does not mean that they're necessarily reasonable. It's up to the judge to decide that, and that's exactly what happened with all those MPs a few years ago. So, and some of them, as I pointed out, did have to step down and renounce their citizenships, and then run again. So. I don't see why Senator Payman should not be subjected to the same rigour. I mean, it really defies belief that she thinks that she's above the Constitution.
Let's see. Let's just finish
that Senator Hanson does in this place is spread hatred, spread division, because that's what you're made to do here, and it's outrageous. It's beyond comprehension. Here, take it. Absolutely, just don't understand that we're wasting our time talking about.
Babette's like half laughing.
Yeah, and this
I
is
think
the best.
That's everyone.
It's the best media coverage that Babette has had. It's the most neutral media coverage that he's had.
Yeah, I like that. He was considered like the voice of reason in this whole issue.
Matter that has no basis. You've had it good for too long, Senator Hanson. Through the chair.
Senator Hanson, is this a point of order?
Yes, it is, because if she's got the documents, I ask her to table those documents.
That's not a point of.
Senator Hanson has had it too good for too long. Didn't Senator Hanson go to jail?
She did.
In the beginning of her political career?
Yep, they kicked her out of the Liberal Party, but she was already on the ballot, and that's how she got in. And they did. They actually put her in jail. So I think for Payman to sit there and make these accusations, and I mean, Pauline needs to have security. She has to have a very low profile out in public. Her life is restricted because of the constant threats that she get. I got caught up in one incident when we were speaking at the Australian Monarchist League, and we had all these people come in, all these interlopers come into the venue, and we were quite surprised because it was quite early in the morning, and I thought, oh, they're probably all still hungover or, you know, still partying on from Saturday night the night before. I'm surprised they're here at 9 o'clock to come and infiltrate the event, but it was quite frightening, and that's the life that Pauline leads. So when you look at someone like Paymont, who's accusing her of all these things, calling her disgusting, and the fact that she has used parliamentary privilege, just like Marine Faruqi did, to call, you know, the Australian Parliament racist. And I sit there and I think, look, you two women are sitting there. You've come from Afghanistan, you've come from Pakistan, and you're sitting here calling Australia racist. If we look at the Taliban or we look at the Pakistani Parliament, I am pretty sure there's no Anglos, people of Anglo descent, sitting in their parliaments. So I just think they're both a pair of hypocrites, and using parliamentary privilege. You know, I've been subjected to vitriol with Senator Nick McKim using parliamentary privilege against the women at the, I think it was the Hobart rally, the Posey Parker tour. It was appalling. He referred to women as turds, T-E-R-D, instead of TERFs, turds. He called us trans-exclusionary, radical, or drop kicks or something. It was absolutely disgusting. So I'm surprised that they haven't been reprimanded in some way, because those sorts of personal attacks, like the chamber, is not a place for that.
But
Yeah,
this is Nick Mackenzie from the Greens, right? And Marine Faruqi from the Greens, and these are guys, Avi, that these days they talk glowingly about, you know, Hamas terrorists.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, Australian women defending their rights in Hobart or wherever else, just, you know, doing these things, they're very, you know, using terms like turds or whatever. It's totally different world for them, you know. Like they're all these foreign interests that they support. It's crazy, right? These terrorists that they support.
What was the Animal Justice Party MP here in Victoria? He has
I
two
forget her name.
Trans kids. One's a boy. The one was born a boy, became a girl. The other one's a girl, became a boy.
Oh, the previous one, Andy something.
And Andy Medic.
Yeah, that's
it. So he called me a Nazi in under parliamentary privilege. That's, you know, they get away with this all the time. And if you dare point out the fact that it's a bit odd that he had two children that were both born in the wrong bodies the opposite way, somehow he's the victim when you do that. I remember he had that issue with one of his kids, who was going around wreaking havoc in the northern suburbs. There was a story there, and it was a very dodgy story. And if you dare point it to the facts or wanted to understand the facts of the story, even repeat what the police were saying about the story, he would jump on you. But he had no problem, standing up in Victorian Parliament and calling me a Jew, a Nazi. But that they all do it. It's what they do, and they use the protection of Parliament. And in this case, you have people that have come from overseas that have, that Australia has welcomed them in, and they've even used the court systems. You look at Pauline Hanson now, who's under the 18C, who's having, when Lydia Thorpe says that she's been convicted, she hasn't been convicted. It's a civil case. She implies it as some sort of criminal case. It's a civil case under 18C, and she's appealing it. But it is an outrageous thing that, and it'll be interesting to hear your perspective on that as a lawyer. Is Rukshan and I can't count how many people have told me to go back to Israel. How many leftists have told me to go back to Israel? And I didn't realize now I've got a lot of litigation. If Pauline fails in her appeal, well, we can suddenly go to court and start taking everyone under 18C because you told us to go back to where we came from. I don't understand how that is a racist trope to say to somebody who has come to Australia, who is benefiting off Australia in every which way, more than the vast majority of Australians, to be in the Parliament, to get paid that much money to sit in the corridors to hold such a position in the most powerful offices in our country, and then somebody tell you if you don't like the way things are here, then just go back to where you came from, that you obviously think is so much better because you don't condemn as much. How is that racist? And how is the court going? How is anything like that going to How's the court going to, as Lydia Thorpe would say, convict anyone of that?
Yeah, 18C has always been quite problematic just because of how broadly it was drafted. So, to be honest, it's always needed to go to the High Court to be properly tested. And hopefully, I mean, in my view, it actually needs to be repealed. So, a bit like the tickle versus giggle matter, the what is a woman question, these things need to be answered in the High Court. And if there's anyone who can fight that battle, I think Pauline Hanson's very well placed to fight it. But I mean, Marine Faruqi and her family have formed with this. She has a son, Osman Faruqi, who is a journalist. I believe he's with the Sydney Morning Herald now. He's the cultural director or editor or something fluffy. Used to be on ABC. He's writing a book called The Racist Country. And it's like, your mother came here on the asset register. She owns 4 properties. As pointed out, she's in the parliament. And you just sit here and complain about
Both
the
of them,
system.
he's a high-paid journalist, and has more power than most people. She's a what are you complaining about? How are you guys the victims of Australia's racism? Literally, you get more than everyone. It's insane. He sued Latham when he worked for Rebel. He sued Latham, and he's actually the reason that got my first Facebook pages banned, Osman Faruqi, because he complained to Facebook that I doxed him because I shared a screenshot of his own website that had to contact him when he was making one of these claims that Australia's the biggest racist. And I'm like, all right, if you guys go to his website, you can let him know what you think about the racism. This was probably my early days of being on the internet, so I wouldn't do it today, but he wields so much power. He got me shut down within 24 hours. I lost close to 1 million followers because Osman Faruqi complained to at the time it was Facebook, and the entire media apparatus got behind him and made it like I was this evil guy that doxed him. But literally, I shared a screenshot from his own website. What do you reckon, Rukshan? Do you reckon, as I know you're not Pakistani, you're Sri Lankan. Do you reckon you would complain?
I'll speak for the South Asian population in saying that. Look, most of us are not really politically engaged at all in this country, and they're very hardworking and can contribute to the Australian way of life, and don't really get involved in the types of discussions that the Faruqi family might be getting involved in, because we know how wonderful it is to live in Australia, and we understand that a country like Pakistan, as beautiful as the people there might be, the country itself is pretty crap. I could say that about the same thing about India, and I can say the same thing about Sri Lanka. I'm not being selective here based on where I'm from. When you compare it to the standard of living in the West, the rights that people have, in particular for a country like Pakistan, the rights that women have, especially throughout the country, there is a massive difference between that country and Australia. So for people that then come here to turn around and crap on this country and say, oh, it's so bad, everyone's so racist and stuff. Every couple of days I see not couple of days, but every couple of weeks I see a story in Pakistan where some Hindu or some Christian is getting lynched by a mob of people who are Muslim. Like, those things don't happen in Australia. When you're talking about racism and how so very bad it is in Australia, it is not that. Those are things that a lot of people have left behind and have come to countries like Australia. So, I think most South Asians who are looking at people like Faruqi see them as more people who are not representing them as people from that part of the world, but more so they're very ideologically inclined to a certain worldview. And you have to understand that even in countries like Pakistan and Sri Lanka, you have the far left, you have these kind of left-wing style people that are out to destroy traditional conservative values in those countries as well. And it's a totally different type of politic, but you have the same type of people. And I think Faruqi being involved in the Greens, and there's a few others like her who are from South Asia who are involved in the Greens, and they have this worldview, but they happen to come from, I think, more of this kind of left-wing, anti-colonialist, and all these kind of things, and they're very happy to go against the white man and all the problems they believe the white man has caused them, but they'll never look in their own backyard and never talk about those issues. So, yeah, I think if you're watching this and speaking as a South Asian, most South Asians do not think like that about Australia. And there is this massive support for Pauline Hanson that I believe there exists within the South Asian community, because they come from this common sense view of the world, and they kind of understand what they're saying. They're very well educated. The education levels of Southeast Asians are very high, so they can kind of tell the contextual meaning of the arguments that Pauline Hanson is making. So we know that it's not this racism that they're trying to convince us. So that's probably what I have to say, Avi.
You got me thinking about this. That's why I brought it up on screen. Is like,
like this would never fly in. She wouldn't be able to explain this to someone in Pakistan if
in
she went
Pakistan
back there,
or in like she's wearing the Palestinian keffiyeh at this pride event where it says rainbow kids need safe schools. Like, do that. Like this, how do you campaign for those two opposing things at the same time? How does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's like the quiz for Palestine. You just think you guys wouldn't last 5 minutes in an area.
And you know what
like
they call it? They have a word for that now, because too many people bring up that point, and that's what the left is really good at. They create words to shut down a logical argument. So with that one, they go, "Oh, that's pinkwashing." When you point out that the only place gay people are actually safe in the entire Middle East is Israel, they go, "Oh, that's pinkwashing." Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I had a friend who was dating someone who was from Jordan, and ended up ending the relationship because this young man was so traumatized by the fact that he could never go home. He could never take his boyfriend home to Jordan because they would kill him. And this young man was living in the West now, but I mean, that's the reality.
Yep. And
it's not this left wing pipe dream as well. I think they believe like, after a few more decades, the Middle East will kind of reform, and all these kind of the stuff that we have here with like kids being read these books about different genders and stuff will all happen in the Middle East. No, it won't happen there. As say whatever you want about the Middle East, but they stick to their core traditional values, and a lot of it's based on religious teachings that they're very strict on, and it's not going to happen that the way these leftists.
But the woke left here, the woke white left here, I can understand they're delusional, right? I can understand that they have no idea about what really goes on the other side of the world. But Marie Faruqi knows exactly what goes on in Pakistan. And she could apply that same stuff to the Middle East because it almost comes from the same culture. It's a blend of that. Okay, radical Islam is in Pakistan, and it's also in the Middle East. She knows that they're exactly how they treat the gay community, the trans, all this shtick that she stands up for just to get votes. She knows.
Yeah, she's playing a character.
Absolutely. And then she'll sit there and it's kind of her that's and people like her that drive the gay and queer LGBTQ, whatever they're up to now. But she's the one that pushes them into this crazy politics that ends up with Queers for Palestine that you mentioned before. That I would like to see them. Look, the war's going to wrap up very soon. That's the thing. The war's Lebanon today. There's a ceasefire. Gaza, Trump's about to come back in, and the most divisive president in history is going to bring peace not only to the Middle East but around the world. Mark my words. So the Gaza war is coming to an end, whether it's going to happen before Trump goes in or after. And it'll be safe for all the LGBTQI plus activists who have been fighting so hard for this ceasefire to go there and meet their heroes. They can go there and you don't have, because in the last year, whenever you make that argument to them, besides the pinkwashing, they said, "Oh, of course you want us to go there while Israel bombs it." Go there when Israel's not bombing it. Go to Gaza, go to the West Bank when there is a ceasefire, when you're free to walk around. Good luck. I will help pay for your ticket so that you can open your eyes, and then you will be begging to go to Tel Aviv. You will be begging the Israelis to save you and take you to Tel Aviv, only 30 kilometers down the road.
Or you could go to Iran. I mean, they are, I think, the world's biggest country with respect to transgender surgeries, because you're allowed to be gay as long as one of the partners goes and does all the surgeries. So if you want to be trans, probably Iran's the place to go.
All right, let's. We'll finish what she was saying
Order.
because she's so
Senator
great.
Payman, you have the call.
I am very honoured that I live rent-free in Senator Hanson's mind, but I think you've got better things to do than worry about Section 44 here when there's nothing to see. I mean, the racism and comments and quotes that you've made in the past.
Senator Hanson.
I want to withdrawn that
I love the way
racism.
Hanson stands up.
It's not racism. I want it withdrawn.
Senator Payman, I'd just rephrase that, please, and I'd ask you just to withdraw for the benefit of the chamber.
Deputy President, I would like to make a few quotes from Senator Hanson that has previously indicated.
No, Senator Payman, you have to withdraw for the benefit of the chamber, but then you can quote as much as you want.
I will withdraw so I can proceed.
Now proceed.
Thank you. Senator Hanson's quote, I challenge anyone to tell me one thing that I've said that is racist. And here I begin. There's a few. There's so many, we could be here all day. She has said, I believe we're in danger of being swamped by Asians, in her first speech. In 1998 policy speech, she said Aboriginality would no longer exist under her party's policies.
You see where she's
In
just going with all this?
Faruqi, piss off back to Pakistan.
Oh, this one.
The fact that you would say just weeks ago to Senator Faruqi, piss off back to Pakistan, you're not just vindictive, mean, nasty, you bring disgrace to the human race. No dignity whatsoever as a senator in this prestigious place where we're supposed to bring unity, where we're supposed to have that freedom of expression, yes, but within boundaries and confinements of respect. I kept on giving you the benefit of the doubt, Senator Hanson, despite your repetitive attempts to be racist to anyone who does not look like you.
You are a convicted
Senator Hanson, point of order.
Racist.
Thorpe jumped
Senator
in.
Hanson.
Yes, I do, and I want these comments about calling me racist
You're a convicted
withdrawn.
racist.
Senator Thorpe, please. This is not adding to the Senator Thorpe. This is not adding to the debate. Accusing someone of being a racist is in breach of the standing orders. Senator Payman can just withdraw that and continue with your remarks.
Racist.
For the benefit of the chamber.
For the benefit of this chamber, I will withdraw. But you know what, Senator Hanson? How do you live with yourself, Senator Hanson, with so much violent hatred? How do you live through your days spreading hatred? How do you go to sleep? How do you look your neighbours in the eye knowing that you come to this place?
Yes, that is just more of the same, but it's exactly what we've been talking about. I think we'll move on to the next subject because unless somebody wants to add something on that issue, I think
No.
we
Quite enough
get
of
it.
that.
ABC Chair Kim Williams says investment in national broadcasts are the best counter to flood misinformation. Now, to be fully transparent, I know this may come as a shock to many. Rukshan's nodding his head. How do you feel, Catherine, before I say what I'm going to say?
Oh, we're giving them $1.2 billion and their numbers are in the toilet, and they've got journalists there who, come on to a platform and the numbers just sink and then they sort of fail upwards, and that they think that anyone's still actually watching this except for maybe grandmas and little kids watching Bluey is just outrageous. If they can't make $1.2 billion work, he needs to be fired.
So, for what I was about to say, for full transparency, wait for your head to spin, Kim Williams is I guess, like, he's kind of my uncle. his sister's
is that
married.
why he's asking for money?
Yeah, yeah, that's why he's a grifter. He's actually his sister is married to my uncle. I haven't seen him in like 20-something years. He was always nice to me. I don't think he's actually a bad person, but I haven't seen him for 25 years. I messaged him today. He actually agreed to come on to the show at some time soon to discuss these issues. So we'll see how that goes. But it is wild. I think the idea that we can do this show, for example, and that's what I'd put to him, is like, we can do this show, me and Rukshan, and we rate better than most ABC. And if you give us a level playing field, like, why can't we be on the ABC? Why can't we have if you don't think that there's a bias, and he says that there's no bias at the ABC, he doesn't believe there's a bias at the ABC, then why is there no real conservative show on the ABC? And I can guarantee you, if you give us the ABC as a platform, like, we're doing it, we have to fund it ourselves. We don't get to force people to pay through taxes to fund the work we do. We have to crowdfund. Rebel News, we crowdfund most, everything that we do. It's the viewers pay for it, or through memberships through, that's right, guys, Rebel News Plus at the opposition.show. But that's how we do it, is we have to ask the viewer, going, do you believe in what we're doing? Do you are you entertained, or whatever it is? Then you pay for it. But the ABC just gets unlimited money from the taxpayer for people mostly who don't watch what they're doing. So I don't think you can have it both ways. You can't expect the taxpayer to fund it when it is so biased. So you've either got to open it up to make it genuinely non-biased, or, mate, start crowdfunding it. Let's see how you go. Like, get your viewers to pay for it. Rely on become commercial. I don't think that there's a place in 2024 where we need to be funding media as a taxpayer. Like, I just don't see that.
Well, Media Watch, I've been told that they have literally dozens of people who work on that show for a 15-minute segment once a week. And then, I look at shows like you guys, I look at like my show running on the smell of an oily rag, and literally you have one person sort of assisting you and then some techie guys. And that's it. And you, as you rightly pointed out, probably getting better ratings and better engagement and more followers than the ABC. And then to see also Kim Williams come out with that scathing vitriol towards Joe Rogan. And I'm like...
Well, we're about to get onto that one too.
But if you go back to that article, Harvey, I think the whole pitch now seems to be in line with, everything that's been discussed by the government. It seems to be, hey, we need more money to help fight misinformation.
Misinformation,
like, that's their whole pitch
exactly.
now.
It's
it kind of fits
such a
into
joke.
that whole stick, Yeah.
And look, he did agree to come on our show in the next few. I'll update people. We'll see how that goes. And it is interesting because I have this relationship with him as a teenager. Which I don't like. I wasn't even sure if he would remember me when I texted him, and he said he does, and he says that he actually has fond memories of me as a teenager. I was a bad teenager, so that's interesting in itself. I was expecting him to go, "Oh crap, he remembers me." Oh no, I'm in all sorts of strife. But he did come on he is saying he'll come, like he doesn't want to talk about the Joe Rogan thing anymore, and I think that if you listen to his
3AW
interviews today, like 3AW, he was shook by the reaction, realizing how much I think people despise the mainstream media, and especially ABC, and how much people trust platforms like Joe Rogan, and that him even. So what was it? We can probably listen to what he said and then go from there, I guess. So this was it.
I have a question about Joe Rogan, and you've sort of touched on elements of this in the US. He's obviously the world's most popular podcast host. He has 3 billion listeners. He's sort of managed to successfully capture that bro market in America. And his influence is such that in the wake of the US election, the Democrats have said that one of Kamala Harris's mistakes was that she didn't appear on his program. So I'm just wondering if you had any observations about what's behind the Joe Rogan effect, how you believe he's managed to so successfully capture this huge market. And then for us here in Australia, how would or should the ABC be going about capturing that kind of audience?
Look, I'm not sure that I'm the right person to respond to that question. I am not a consumer or enthusiast about Mr. Rogan and his work.
Shocking.
I am not one of the 3 billion, and I'm unlikely to be 3 billion and one anytime soon. I think people like Mr. Rogan prey on people's vulnerabilities. They prey on fear. They prey on anxiety. They prey on all of the elements that contribute to uncertainty in society, and they entrepreneur fantasy outcomes and conspiracy outcomes as being a normal part of social narrative. I personally find it deeply repulsive, and to think that someone has such remarkable power in the United States is something that I look at in disbelief. I'm also absolutely in dismay that this can be a source of public entertainment when it's really treating the public as plunder for purposes that are really quite malevolent.
I think so. Like, I think his biggest issue is that he's out of touch. I do, like, he's pretty new to the job. I think it was in the last year he took over the position. I'm pretty sure it was the last year or so. I actually think from what I remember and what I know of him, he's not a bad guy, and he's not a radical leftist. I think his biggest problem, to be honest, if we're digging deep into it, is actually he was super pro the COVID vax stuff, and I've seen he's commented in the past about that, and I think what he sees in Joe Rogan is, if you're listening to what he's saying, it's, if you apply it to the vaccine stuff, it's about how Rogan reacted to COVID vaccine mandates and stuff like that. Anyways, but I don't think he realizes how out of touch he is, and that is kind of the problem that I see with the ABC, is that you might not be a bad guy, but you realize when you talk and you say things like that, and you, for whatever your reasoning behind it is, to attack Joe Rogan in that way, and almost you're attacking Joe Rogan, but you're actually also attacking anyone that watches him. And that's a hell of a lot more people than that watches the ABC. I don't think you're in the position to essentially call all Joe Rogan's viewers and listeners stupid. Like, what are you? You're only clever if you watch the ABC.
Well, I think also he's missing the point with podcasts. These long form podcasts where people get to sit there and speak their mind to more than just the issue for which they've become known. And I think with the pace of life, when we're watching TV and it's always short, sharp snippets, it's always a lot to take in. And I think the reason podcasts have risen in popularity so much, I work on my own a lot, so as do a lot of many other lawyers, but we're often listening to podcasts just to keep us company, sort of in the background. And I think for him to just sit there and say that, Joe's being malevolent, when all he's doing is giving a platform to interesting people to talk about a whole range of issues. Joe's not necessarily pushing his opinions on his listeners. Sometimes he disagrees with his guests, but it's just allowing people to actually get their point across without going, right, well, this is only a 10-minute show, so we're just going to cut you off now. So you're right. I think he is really completely out of touch. The ABC went off the boil years ago when they used to do sort of news very well, documentaries very well, making Australian content, and then they've sort of drifted over into this sort of opinion and commentary. And I think, if the ABC got back to what they were doing originally, which was high quality news and Australian content, they'd probably regain some of their listeners.
Well, what I would like to add to that is the fact that one of the things I noticed is that press gallery itself, the way they're, laughing and the way they frame this question as well
Yeah.
about the bro
Yeah.
crowd and all this kind of stuff, right? So I think that there is this thing within the mainstream media as well. They're a bit worried about the Joe Rogan effect and what's that shown to the rest of the world as well, that
Yep.
these podcasts, like Katherine Deves was saying, and other independent media like us, and shows like what you're doing, Katherine, on ADHD, like there is a shift going on, and it's maybe not as pronounced in Australia, but we really saw how impactful it was in the US. And a lot of that had to do with Elon Musk, right? So I just want to play this clip up. If you switch to my share screen, this is very much in the same kind of frame as this particular individual. And I'll just switch to that. So let's just have a listen to the CEO of Axios talking about Elon Musk. And because Musk has really been out there, saying that X is the future of news and that everyone has a voice now, and independent media is the future of news. And this is how Axios and the media class are reacting to this in the US.
Everything we do is under fire. Elon Musk sits on Twitter every day, or X today, saying like, we are the media, you are the media. My message to Elon Musk is, bullshit. You're not the media. You having a blue check mark, a Twitter handle, and 300 words of cleverness doesn't make you a reporter. You don't do that by popping off on Twitter. You don't do that by having an opinion. You do it by doing the hard work.
Yeah, come on, slow clap, everybody.
They're all patting each other on the back.
Yeah.
You said it.
But Elon reacted to that. He said, yeah, whatever, laughing my ass off. You are the media now to the rest of the X audience, and legacy media know it. And I think a lot of it has to do with this shift that we're seeing with what Elon Musk has managed to do when it comes to this, and just really liberate the way that people are able to talk about news. And that Axios guy might have a point, and it's true. Yes, journalists, it's a profession and they do things in a certain way. That's all true. But, we've seen time and time again now that independent media, as well as these podcasts, really allow the public to engage in news in a new way that people find more interesting. So there is that shift happening. And I heard just the other day that, today I heard that Vivek Ramaswamy and these guys were proposing that, why don't we open up the press gallery for the US president in the White House? Why don't we open it up to podcasters to come there in as well? Because they have bigger audiences, right? The New York Times, the ABC, the younger generation aren't listening to them. They're listening to like Joe Rogan. So why don't we have some of these podcasters that want to be involved in politics come into the press conferences and ask questions as well, because they will get the message out there to the people. So that shift is happening, and Elon and Trump and all these things are going around are making that happen. And these guys at the ABC, your uncle, I don't want to say a bad word about your family, obviously, I'm being very careful.
Look, hold on a second. I see people in the comments saying, I have hope, and we'll see when he's on the show, and just the fact that he would come on the show would be telling in itself. Like, think about it. The entire system that he operates, none of them would dare come on. Everyone below him wouldn't dare come on. So I'm saying I know from a personal level that I think that there is hope, and he's new to the job, and I'm hoping that he does do some good for the ABC. Do I think the ABC deserves more funding? Hell no. And I will say it to his face. And I think the ABC has done a horrible job. And I don't think he realizes how horrible the job they're doing. He's either, I'm hoping he's just deluded by it and there is something to work with. That's what I'm hoping. Am I giving him more of a benefit of the doubt because I have a personal, maybe. And so feel free to say whatever you want to say. Listen, Rukshan, I know your family run the Sri Lankan BC, the SBC. Is that what they call it?
No.
So let's go for them. But no, it doesn't. I like I said, I also haven't seen him for 25 years. I wasn't even sure he would remember me. But he was, when I reached out to him, he was super nice about it. He was positive, and he actually said the reason why he couldn't come on, sooner is just because of time. But he says he's going to see a time, and then we can ask him straight. We just can't talk about the Rogan issue, which I'm happy to do that, because I don't think Rogan is the biggest issue that matters in this. I think as Australians, the issue of ABC, of funding the ABC, that is just a woke news network that we're all paying for. That's the real issue here. The thing with Joe Rogan, I would love to talk to him about it, just whether it's on air or off air. I would talk to him even off air, just going like, hold on a second, is it just your issue about do you not see the problem? Like there's a deeper issue here that and when you spout that kind of nonsense about Rogan, it actually shows that you're not understanding the current media landscape and where we're going. Like, if you're in charge of the Australian taxpayer-funded media organisation and you don't actually get how media works, that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that they're just coming in and asking for more money, like, as I said, dozens of people on Media Watch, and we all know now that we've been lied to. I mean, that was brought home very much so in COVID.
Yeah.
The ABC is very on side with all the gender ideology nonsense.
Yep.
They've even got their whole ABC queer platform. And I mean, to sit there and have the audacity to say, oh, this will counter misinformation, when you sit there and lie about what biological sex is, or you lied to people about what happened in COVID, you were lying about whether Biden had dementia, like all these things, and people can see it now, so they simply don't trust them. So obviously these big budgets are no longer justifiable, and they're running scared.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. That's what I'd want to pick his brains at, is because when you talk about misinformation, like, do you really believe everything that the ABC is spewing is true? And that was kind of Elon's thing here, is that, from the head of the government-funded, he said something else later, which was about the fact that pointing out, or was that Rogan who pointed out?
I think it was Rogan.
No, I think there was another post where he pointed out that they're going for the misinformation, to tackle misinformation. They want more funding to tackle misinformation by them being the gatekeepers of truth when they lie so much. So, like, I wouldn't mind having a list. In fact, Rukshan, that's what we should do when he comes on. Like, literally have a list of all the misinformation that the ABC has published, and probably and would still be up there, about COVID, about gender ideology, about all these different things, everything within the culture war, about Israel, about, like, everything. Heck, I bet you I could find stuff about me that's misinformation about you. Have they done an article on you, Rukshan, before?
They have, yes. That's
there we go. So, I'm sure there's so much misinformation that we can present to him and go, so why should you get funding to counter misinformation when you guys are the biggest perpetrators of misinformation? Yes,
yeah, that'll
definitely.
make interesting Christmas or Christmas dinner, I would say, if he's coming along as well.
So, I think we can move on to, like we were saying in the beginning of this show, the Parliament is off its head tonight, all day, and...
Yeah, Senator Babet, actually, I was trying to get him to join us, but he actually said he's doing some work today, so they're very busy being...
This is a one-day Babet's done work. Let's just...
They're keeping him in there, so apparently they got a lot of bills to get through, and it's just, I've seen a lot of commentary just about how Labor's kind of going about this in terms of getting these bills through right at the end. And I think this video that you got up here...
Yeah, let's watch this. This is Jackie Lambie, was it today or yesterday? No, I think this morning.
This is a little bit of it, yeah.
Having a go about today.
Last night, Minister Wong said all people in this place deserve a safe workplace. And just an hour later, they send a guillotine through like that. How is it safe for the employees in my office to go through 41 bills in a matter of about 12 hours? How is that safe? How is that safe? How bloody hypocritical. And what about the right to disconnect? Oh, do you hear that? Do you hear that through the chair, Senator Cash? Do you hear those ACTU, Sally McManus and Michelle O'Neill? Do you hear them standing up for our staff? Absolutely not. They're not up there. They've got Gabba tape all over them this morning. And it's not what the Australian people voted for. We were voted in to make legislation better. We have the right to put amendments up. We have the right to debate this. And you are shutting us up. And the Australian people want you to get this right. This is not safe. It is dangerous. It is dangerous to shove bills down our throats. It is dangerous to shove bills down the Australians' throats without us probably going through and actually having a good look at it and putting it under the microscope. I was not voted in this place to give you a free pass to put through 40 bills in one day. And I sure as hell know the Tasmanian people do not want me to do that. So I'll tell you this, I'll remind you of something, and I'll table the document, is that in 2013, Rudd tried to put through nearly 50 bills on June the 26th. Guess what happened in September? Guess what happened? Guess who became the Prime Minister? Not Rudd, Tony Abbott. So why don't you keep playing your games in here?
Love or hate her. She's got a point today. She does have a point today. I feel like her shtick, like Lydia, she's a more
calculated version of Lydia Thorpe. She's more calculated.
Yeah, more sophisticated version. Like, I can't believe I'm saying that about, like, using the word sophisticated when I'm talking about Jackie Lambie, but she's like a more sophisticated version of Lydia Thorpe. Like, she has more depth to what she's saying, but she is always just going up there screaming. And on this one, I totally agree with her. Like, COVID, I thought she was a disgrace. When it comes to military stuff, she's often on point. So she's a mixed bag, Jackie Lambie, on many levels. But what's your take?
As you point out, her arguments have a little bit more substance. It's not just yelling and screaming and accusations. I mean, to dump 41 bills on an independent senator, so I believe she has a staff of maybe 3, and they have to get through that in 12 hours. And some of this legislation is really substantive. It's going to cost the taxpayers a lot. I mean, if we're looking at this housing bill with respect to bringing some of these housing commission properties up to standard, you're looking at $500 million, I think. And to not allow members or senators to have enough time to consider and then vote, and then implementing, the guillotine action where you put a limit on how long they're allowed to speak for. I mean, the whole purpose of Parliament is to be able to have these debates, ventilate what the issues are. I mean, parliamentarians, when they put legislation through, they have to sit there and think, what is the worst possible interpretation of this legislation? And that takes time and thought and consideration. So I think what Albo here is trying to do as well, along with creating an unsafe working environment, is
I loved how she flipped it on him.
Oh, I know. I was going to say that before about Lydia and about Paymon, the bullying of Senator Hanson. I mean, that's creating an unsafe environment for her. She could turn around and say, well, I've got PTSD, so I'm going to do you for workplace injury. But in looking at what Albo's trying to do here, I mean, he's obviously seen the writing on the wall. He's done for. He's cooked. So they're going to be calling an election probably, I think, maybe end of March, but it has to be by May 17. So this might be the last time they're sitting. So they're just trying to scattershot through everything they want done. And the people who are going to lose out is us, because we're going to have all this bad legislation that we're then going to have to contend with. So I think Jackie Lambie very much has a point, delivered, she's a bit rough, but she delivered her point fairly effectively. I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, as a layman, I think as just a general Australian looking at this, maybe having no idea of what's happened, we spent months talking about The Voice. We've spent months talking about misinformation. We've spent months talking about this under 16 thing. And then you hear that the government, on the last day smashing through 40 bills or whatever. Really, you wonder how much time is actually wasted on some of Albo's more frivolous activities that really haven't achieved much in terms of real world change for Australians. So it is crazy to see that this is actually how Parliament works. And I think, even in the comments and on social media, a lot of people are quite surprised by this type of behavior. But I've also noticed that a lot of people who have been in politics for a long time saying that this is kind of part and parcel when it comes to some of the actions by both parties in government, but especially the Labor government, who are known to do these type of things on a last day like this. So, I don't know what the repercussions are from this. We'll hear about it today and people will complain, but what really is the repercussions from them doing something like this? Because I feel like they get away with this stuff all the time.
Yep, and this is one of the bills that they're rushing through, which is being debated. I think tonight in the Senate is the Australian Senate debates on the world's. And when they say debate, there's no real debate. There's no scrutiny.
It's 1 hour, apparently.
One of the many bills going through today, and it's a Trojan horse. This is like, it's not a. As a parent of teenagers, yes, I would love to snap my fingers and reverse back time and get rid of the internet for kids, get rid of social media for kids, because I absolutely agree that they have such a horrific effect on kids. But, one, the government is the last person I'll trust on this planet to be in charge of moderating my kids' anything, including internet usage. And two is, it's not the reason they're doing it. And that's the thing. That's why we have a Senate. That's what every senator's job is to do, is to think about how can this be abused in a way that negatively affects all of us later. So yes, the idea of banning kids from under 16 from social media, even if you agree with that, I would say to you, firstly, do you really trust the government in implementing that? And whether they can. Like, the only way that they could possibly do it is ID all of us when we use the internet. And that, to me, to take people's for people to have to provide their ID just to use the internet without breaking any laws. I think if somebody breaks a law, or if they defame somebody, or they're in a court case, fine. But to have to get people's identity for them just to scroll the internet raises so many red flags.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that it is a way that maybe they're trying to push through digital ID through the back door. I don't really like the idea of biometric scanning of my own children, and I don't really look. I'm not averse to saying that children under 16 should not use socials. I've got 3 teenagers. I've spoken about this publicly. They had a hold of my twins had a hold of Snapchat for a little while, and then I looked at the conversation and it was just rubbish, and they were being mean to each other, and I said, hand your iPads over, we're taking it off. And I think they are actually somewhat relieved. I think the less time the kids spend on screen, the better, but I think it really should be up to the parents, or if they are going to implement this ban, and it is a world first, so we don't have other jurisdictions where we can look to what they've done and see what worked, what didn't, to rush through such a monumental piece of legislation. It's all scattershot. They haven't included certain platforms, and they've missed out on dealing with porn. Like, they haven't even addressed
I know,
that
the
issue.
idea that a teenager can jump on Pornhub but can't have a Facebook account is mind-boggling.
Yeah, so I think
Yeah.
they definitely need to spend some more time talking about this rather than just rushing it through.
And you ran for the Liberal Party, didn't you? I remember. And are you still a Liberal Party member?
I am still a Liberal Party member.
Why is the Liberal Party, not why are you still a member, why is the Liberal Party, why is the so-called opposition supporting him on this one?
Look, I think they do genuinely believe that this is about protecting children. So for those who are pushing it through for nefarious reasons, I find it really distasteful that they're weaponising, people's natural inclination to want to protect their children, protect other people's children from the harms online. But I think even if you got, there's a real problem with bullying in this country that we know. My daughters have been subjected to it this year. We've really struggled with it. And I don't necessarily think that just banning them off social media is going to be the solution. So, yeah, I spoke to Alex Antic earlier in the week, and I genuinely think that the Libs who are pro this do think that they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. If you can't see what's really going on here, I just don't think you should be in Parliament. You shouldn't be representing us. It's so obvious what's happening here that
Yeah.
it's shameful, and I just don't get why. Yeah. Well, what's his name? What is Dutton? You know, he's a former copper. He kind of like, I think he just approaches these things with a cop's head, and no, I think he does. Like I preferred Prime Minister for sure. On many things, I agree with him. I think he's great. On a few things like this, and the e-safety commissioner, and all these other things like that are coming around from censorship. Like luckily on the misinformation bill, they rejected it. But I feel like even that they rejected it, not because they really disagree with it. I think they just realised how angry the public would get about it. It was more a polling issue rather than because I think the misinformation bill was originally a Liberal concept as well, just like the safety commissioner is a Liberal thing, and it's almost the biggest threat to us as a democracy is the more censorship that they apply. And it's the biggest threat to the Liberal Party as well. That's what I don't understand. How Dutton doesn't see that all this legislation, anything that brings in more censorship, is only going to be used against the Liberal Party and the Liberal Party agenda. He's either really stupid on this issue or completely naive.
Well, I think, when you look at, if we don't have freedom of speech, we don't have freedom, essentially. Freedom of speech here in this country is very precarious. We have the constitutional implied right of political communication, but that's it. We don't have a First Amendment. So the idea we actually have freedom of speech in this country is a bit of a fallacy. And then obviously pushing through all the hate speech and vilification laws, the racial discrimination, 18C. And our language our speech is actually quite restricted in this country, in my view, and we really need to oppose any efforts to curtail it. And I think, with the MAD bill, we were handing over an extraordinary amount of power and resource to ACMA, which is, God knows what that is. So to a whole lot of faceless bureaucrats, and then obviously, with the E-Karen being empowered.
I love the way E-Karen, that's her legal name.
Well, I would put to you guys to put in an FOI on your own names to the commissioner. I did it on my name, and they said they had 9,000 documents in my file. And I'm like, I'm not even, I've got a bit of a following, but I'm certainly, not up there in the zeitgeist. And I'm like, you have 9,000 documents in a file on me, the e-safety commissioner. Are you joking? Like, what is this, Stasi Australia? So you guys should do it. I'm sure you'd probably bet my number.
We'll do it as a badge of honor. Maybe we'll set up a website.
Harvey's definitely going to do it now. He's
very
definitely
doing it. I think we're going to set up a website and see who has more files at the e-safety commissioner.
You win a prize at the end. And I had to keep drilling it down, and then I just got a whole lot of pages that were literally all just redacted, which was mental. So God knows what they're saying, but we really just should not be putting so much power in the hands of these sort of faceless bureaucrats that are really just not, aside from, seeing the E-Karen get questioned in Senate estimates. I mean, that's another more entertainment for the masses is the Senate estimates. Who would have thought it, to see her in the hot seat getting questioned? But I mean, that's the only way that they can be held accountable. And I think it also comes back to the fact that, we have this bloated bureaucracy in Australia. We've got 450,000 public servants in New South Wales alone. It's like 1 in 5 workers are public servants. So for those of us out there in private sector, working for law firms or for, independent media, and there's at least, for every 5 of us or 4 of us, there's one bureaucrat sitting there looking for work to do, creating so much busy work and making it so hard for people just to run their businesses, keep their employees employed, pay the bills. It's extraordinary. I think we need to have a real reckoning with what's going on with our bureaucracies, and I think this attack on freedom of speech is just another manifestation of that.
We need a Dodge. We need our own department of government efficacy or efficiency, and we need a Elon and a Vivek style person.
You could be the Vivek. You could be the Vivek.
I could potentially be the Vivek. Yeah, and we can just cut all these bureaucrat jobs and just send them home, because they're probably working from home anyway. I don't know how it's all working at the moment, but yeah, a lot of these places probably could be cut, and they're not really adding much value to the Australian public. So I totally agree with what you said there, Catherine. I think they are very bloated. At least in Victoria, I believe the public service is very bloated. Must be every state must be like that, and federally as well. It's just crazy to imagine.
Catherine, what was the most interesting interesting thing you found that wasn't redacted in your 9,000 documents?
Oh, the fact that there is someone sitting there just monitoring all my tweets. Still, I'm just
Can't you file for like a cease and desist, like a restraining order? What are they called? An AVO? Can't you just take them to just look? This is I've got proof of stalking.
Yeah, I feel unsafe. Maybe I should pop down to the cop shop. Or give Billboard a ring, see how he's going, and
who is that?
Billboard Chris.
Oh yes. I speak to him quite often. He's one of those guys that I just love everything about him. Like I think he's consistent, he's honest, he's brave. He's just brilliant at everything he does. We'll have to have him on the show soon. And yeah, but just seeing what the e-safety commissioner here is trying to do to him is wild. Like the reach of Karen, who comes from a country that has the First Amendment, that has she has the right to freedom of speech because she could always go back to where she came from. Is it racist to say it to an American? I keep seeing her in Davos. I'm hoping to
that's
catch
where
her
she
this
comes
year.
from, bro. She goes back to the WEF every year.
She goes every year. And what's his name? What's the guy from True North? Do you remember you were there with him? He's actually a really good guy. What's his name?
Oh yeah, Chris or Adam or Chris? Maybe I can't remember.
What's his name?
Trying to remember.
He's actually. I think he ran for.
Is he the big bloke?
He wants to say, "Is he fat?" He realised he was going to say, "Is he fat?" Yes, he's fat.
Yeah, I remember.
He's a top bloke. I forgot. Oh gosh, hopefully he doesn't see
awesome.
this because I literally see him every year. He's from True North. Anyways, Andrew
Andrew something. I can't remember.
Andrew something.
It is Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew. He bumped into Karen last year, but he's just like he's so Canadian about it. He's super polite. I should have brought it up, but he's just like super polite about his questions. And she straight up, she's so dishonest. And the idea that somebody like her, who can to your face be that dishonest, is in charge of misinformation and disinformation, who's the gatekeeper of all things true, the Ministry of Truth, and she wanted to be the Ministry of the International Ministry of Truth. That's why she goes to WEF every single year. Is wild, and the worst part of it is that that was not a Labor construct. That is a Liberal Party built system. Like there's one thing for us to campaign against it. In the Liberal Party, is there no rebellion within the Liberal Party about these matters? Like I know we have Alex Antic. He's a great guy, and he's actually, he speaks so much sense. I wish he was more prominent. I wish what he stands for was the majority, not the minority of the Liberal Party. Is there something happening in the Liberal Party where there is hope?
I do believe so. Returning to sort of more common sense values, there is this big split within the party with the moderates and the Conservatives. And yes, we do have factions. I mean, in practicality, we do. And there is within, I suppose you'd say, the Conservatives, or what used to just be centre-right, looking at these moderates, it's like, well, why do we want to be Labor-light? Why do we just want to be like the Teals? We have to have points of difference. So those conversations are going on a lot, and there are some people, like just grassroots members, who, because often the moderates and the Conservatives, you'll do your own events and you'll do your own socialising, but there are a few people who are trying to bring more people into the tent and sort of have events where it's cross-pollinated. But yeah, the focus on coming back to common sense values, and I think that seeing the huge success that Trump has had just for standing up what used to be seen as normal, they have to appreciate that there's political capital in that. And like, for example, we've had Matt Keane step away from the party. Simon Birmingham has also resigned today, so he's obviously, one of the moderate leaders. So hopefully with opening up that space, it could be a brilliant new candidate coming through. My vote is for a woman called Leah Blythe, who's very active down in South Australia, and she has conservative values. She was running Women's Liberal Council down there. I think she might be the president of SA, but she was trying to get on the ticket last election. So I would love to see her come in because she's very, very sensible. So it's also just trying to get the right candidates up as well. So there are huge internal battles that go on with respect to that. But I think, within the grassroots, people do realise we can't just be Labor light. If you're going to vote Labor light, you might as well vote Labor. So we have to have that difference. And we have to stop being scared of just standing up and saying what we think and just not going along with whatever the polling says or, whatever the Teals are saying because we're still fretting about losing these inner city metro seats. That's always the question. What are we going to do about the Teal electorates? And I sort of think, well, why don't we go to some of these electorates that have had someone in there from Labor for 20 years who take it for granted, nothing's been done, there's been no attention, and we go after those people because there are aspirational Australians living in those electorates. And I think the Libs probably need to grapple with the fact as well that our support base, yes, it's not as glamorous as maybe Warringah or Wentworth or Kooyong, but it's the aspirational Australians who are looking for a political home, and we could very much do that. So I think there's some real opportunity there, but it's getting the people in who have, who don't suffer from a failure of imagination and can actually see how we can provide, a political home for some of these people.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Now,
well, speaking of Labor light Liberals, I don't think it's more pronounced than any other state is in Victoria, where it's hard to distinguish sometimes between the Liberal Party and the Labor Party on almost everything. And we've seen so many times they've walked into these traps just because of that, because they're trying to appease, the Labor Party, it seems. And I think this story here, Avi, that you've brought up is down that same line, right? It goes to something that happened.
Yeah.
No, go for it. You play this story out, man.
Yeah. So essentially, the Liberal Party had a rally in about the change of name of Berwick Springs to the Sikh gods.
Berwick Springs Lake. It's a lake, not the whole town.
Berwick
Not
Springs
yet.
Lake. Sorry,
not the town yet. The town is later.
They're going to move that. Berwick Springs Lake. They've renamed it to what's his name, like the Sikh god or whatever
Sikh
it was,
god,
leader from 700 years ago in India, for some reason. And so locals who are like, what are we doing? Rallied with the Liberal Party by a rally organised by the Liberal Party, which I think actually he's all right. I think he's one of the ones that didn't. Brad Baden, I think he was actually one of the ones that was decent with more redeeming, if I remember from watching that.
I think so.
Trial. I can't wait for the results of that. That was the most entertaining. I just got to say to you, me and Rukshan, we were in Bali on holiday. Tuned in, spending our wives were losing their minds, I think, because we were just sitting there all day
Poolside.
watching, captivated by that trial. And the most annoying bit was I had to go to America for the pre-election before that, in middle of that, and I couldn't watch the end of it. But it was a wild trial. Anyways, the thing here is that they gate crashed in a similar fashion this event, and for some reason John Pesutto and the party establishment didn't have the same reaction. Why do you think that is?
Well, it seems like these neo-Nazi guys, I mean, they show up at the opening of an envelope.
Yeah.
They do.
We know why they do. We know why they show up. The question is, why is the Liberal Party reacting very differently to this one than when a bunch of women rallied and who certainly couldn't do anything about it?
So I think what happened here, from looking at this article, when they showed up and the MPs realised who they were, they left. And then the police dealt with the wannabe Nazis. And then with respect to what happened at the women's event, the women didn't quite realise what was going on. That day it was very hot, it was very stressful. I was there on the ground. There was socialists, there was the pro-trans, there was a whole lot of different groups. There was the freedom guys. I thought they were the freedom guys because they were all dressed in black at first. And then we just ignored them. We were concentrating on what the women were doing. And then obviously the whole thing played out, and we were close to wrapping up anyway. But I think because Damien got into so much trouble was because she didn't instantly, the moment she realised, denounce and call the police in and run away. I mean, it was brought to the police's attention that those guys were on the steps. The women were not allowed on the steps. I think we were the only ones with a permit there on that day. But when you're in a situation like that and it is very hot, it's very tense, it's very frightening. Like I had a moment where I thought, this is awful. I actually feel really, really threatened. Do I just walk away? Not tell anyone to go back to my air-conditioned hotel room. But I think because it took a while to sort of realise what was actually happening, and we wanted the women to be able to speak. The point was to give them a platform. And then it was like when we left and then you decompress and then you went, oh my God, that was actually really bad. What do we do about this? Why were they there? Why did the police let them there? But I think because the reaction wasn't instantaneous, whereas here, obviously they've learnt their lesson. So they've realised who these guys are and they've left. So lessons learned. Obviously the women were talking about things that, a couple of years ago, we were very much not in the zeitgeist, very much hated for having those views against gender identity ideology. Whereas I suppose for this one, this was about the renaming of a lake and the lack of consultation amongst the community. It's certainly not as controversial as.
I wouldn't say it go that far. What's her name? What's the Premier of Victoria?
Jacinta Allen.
Jacinta Allen, yeah. She basically, which is brilliant. You'll see the irony in this comment today. Yesterday, she lashed out at John Pesciuto for basically the opposition. She's saying any opposition and the fact that the Liberal Party is opposing this makes them Nazis. So if you're opposing the changing of the name of Berwick Springs Lake to whatever this Indian god is, then you're a Nazi. So actually, it would have worked very well in this trial because I remember, we needed the whole thing was that people were calling her a Nazi. So obviously it's true now. Just that the Premier is calling the opposition leader a Nazi, or saying that they were aligning themselves with Nazis because the Nazis showed up. It's the same idea. It's the same smear that was used against Moira Deeming. That's why there are so many similarities here. Is that the Nazis showed up to a Liberal Party event. The label was given. Here in this case, the Premier was even more direct in saying, "You guys are aligning yourselves with Nazis," and but there's just not the big, loud noise. And I think that you might be right in the fact that it's not controversial because, I guess at least in Parliament, in the Liberal Party, they're going, "Well, no, that's the line. We don't think it's Nazi to stand against the government just renaming a place to some Indian thing. But, men can be women and women can be men. And if you oppose that, that is radical. Changing a name is bad. Changing your gender, that's the real Nazi stuff for the Liberal Party in Victoria.
It's this whole guilt by association.
Yes.
And, when in public, particularly like as you know, having a following, being publicly recognised, you don't always know who's in the vicinity. You don't know. Oh, can we take a shot? And you go,
a photo all the time.
Happens a lot,
So if you say no, then they'll go and moan about it on socials, and you look like a bad person. So you go, sure. Half the time you don't know who they are. So just because you're in the vicinity with someone, or just because you may share a view on like one particular issue, and you agree with them on everything. And I think for Jacinta Allen to turn around and use the N-word like that, I mean, it's, as we discussed at the beginning of the show, it's just losing its meaning. And I think that's
Yeah.
wholly disrespectful to the Jewish community and to those who actually suffered under the Nazis back in the 30s.
I wanted to
Totally.
ask you, Catherine. So, one of the biggest points because I watched most of that case on Moira on the live stream, and they just kept going on about this champagne video, just like this champagne video.
What champagne was it? I just want to know what champagne.
Yeah, we want to know about the champagne, and have you given up on the champagne? Because it seems to be like this massive thing for the Liberal Party, where like if a bunch of women get together and God forbid they have some champagne and discuss something, it is somehow some type of nefarious celebration. It's
very
wild
cross.
and bizarre.
They were very cross that there were women sitting there without men having a champagne. So, look, it was a very hot day. It was a horrible day in Melbourne. It was hot and dusty. It was 40 degrees. It was quite emotional. We went back to one of the ladies' hotel rooms and we thought, let's just have a drink. Let's just have a glass of bubbles. I mean, as ladies do, it wasn't anything more than that. But they took huge umbrage to it. So I always quite enjoy whenever I get together with any of those ladies, we make a point to have a glass of champagne.
Brilliant. I think no person with common sense would look at that and be like, that's a major thing that they made it out to be. So it was quite ridiculous whenever they brought it up.
And the thing was, she doesn't drink, and Moira was actually drinking orange juice. It was only me and Posey. So
you and Posey Parker are the alcoholics that you caused the problem for everyone. What was the champagne, just for the record?
Oh, do you know what? I'm trying to think. I think we actually lashed out and we got some French because we wanted to celebrate surviving the day. Yeah,
So proper champagne.
I think it might have been Verve, actually. Yeah. We went large. It had been a big day. Yes.
What is your prediction on the outcome of the case? Where do you feel like it's like? I watched that and I'm thinking, obviously not as a lawyer. So the things that I found with these cases often, the arguments are compelling, but there's a legal technicality that as a non-lawyer you just don't get. But watching the case overall, trying to be as objective as possible, it just feels like Moira's team just destroyed him. On a PR level, like if you even just did that and even the reporting, I think, did it justice. Like at the time of the case, like it was just brutal to Pseudo more than Moira. It was absolutely brutal. But what's your, from a professional perspective, or how do you feel?
Look, it has to meet the bar for defamation. At the end of the day, I know a lot of the sort of turfy arguments were run, which were very much celebrated on socials. I didn't actually watch it. I was working, so I just sort of tried to catch up on it by looking at the socials that evening. But I think His Honour, he's handing down the decision in December. He's not going to let this drag on. But I do understand that both parties are sort of prepared to take this further if they don't get a favourable outcome. So I'm not entirely sure if it's over yet, but it is really hard to tell with.
But I think Pseudo's done if he loses it.
Look, I think yes. I think probably he's lost his political capital if he loses.
And right now he's up in the polls, but I don't think he's up in the polls. I think she's just down. I think Rukshan could beat Jacinta Allen at this point.
Yes. I mean, look, it's turned into the socialist state of Victoria. Yeah. The debt that's down there that people rarely talk about. I mean, I looked it up a couple of months ago. It was $130 billion and growing. So I know people are like the migration within the country. There are more people leaving than coming in, and going down there, pre-pandemic, you go down for a weekend in Melbourne, the shopping, the restaurants, the theatre, and you go down there and it's just a shadow of its former self. And going into the city where all the street is dirty, the street furniture is dirty, there's junkies, it was awful. I felt really sad. that it's in that state. So I don't think people want that to continue. I think they'll want something different this time. And with Labor getting back in, it doesn't appear that anything has improved. It's just gotten worse. So, yeah, hopefully the Libs can come in and turn it around.
So, Katherine, thank you so much. I know we're a bit over time with you. I promised you 90 minutes, but you are so compelling that we had to keep you for longer. We are going to, guys, after this, we're going to move on to just the free speech platforms. And if you want to join in the conversation, the opposition.show. But, Katherine, where can people find you?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a prolific tweeter, so it's just at Deves_Katherine, and I'm also present on Facebook and Instagram, and then I have my show on ADH TV called Talk Straight that airs at 7 p.m. on Tuesdays, but obviously you can just catch up later in the week if you can't make the time. So, yep, that's where I am.
Well, we appreciate you and appreciate you taking time tonight. I know it's not easy as a parent, but also we appreciate everything you do. Sometimes on the internet, even on X these days, you feel like you're a little bit lonely, especially in Australia. You feel like you're a little bit lonely. Rukshan is pretty lonely. He's got no friends. But like even I, Mr. Social Butterfly, I feel lonely because you know so many people are spouting nonsense about so many issues. So it's refreshing seeing people like you standing up, articulate, succinct, just making arguments with level-headed, and it counters Rukshan's rubbish.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, guys. I know I've been sitting here sort of listening, hoping that I don't hear some screaming or some crashing that I was going to have to leap out of.
How old are your kids? How old are your kids? Are they little?
So I've got 11-year-old twins and an 8-year-old. So they're pretty good. Yeah, 11 and a half and an 8-year-old.
Eight is coming out. Like I feel like below 8 is super painful because you can't kind of keep them alone. 8's getting to this different and are they boys, girls?
I have 3 daughters, hence why.
Oh my gosh, I feel so bad for you. Boys are tough when they're young because they do just stupid things, and you're always worried they're going to break something, hurt someone, something that you can't control. But then they grow into like their teen years and they become kind of cool and nice. Girls are the opposite. They're super nice when they're young. They're gentle. They're kind. And then they hit. What did you say your oldest is? 11?
Oh, so I've got twins who are 11 and a half.
Oh my God, double trouble. And it's starting now, isn't it? Because it's a teens.
It is.
They become monsters as teenagers, and I feel for you because you've got the next 7 years of twins that painful.
And then my little one. So fortunately, my husband was raised by a single mum with 4 older sisters, so he's constantly outnumbered by women. He's a 6'3", ex-copper, was a tradie, so he's sort of he's quite firm. So he sort of keeps them in hand, but I'm like, just wait till they hit puberty. They are going to.
He doesn't even know. Like you can't comprehend it because also like I feel like little girls are always daddy's little girls, and they're so kind. They're always so nice, and I just couldn't believe what they morphed into in their teenage years. And I'm like, goodness. But so I wish you luck. I wish him even more luck. But I guess his experience. Does he have older sisters? Did you say 4 older sisters? Older
and
sisters.
Yeah.
So he was the little one.
Yeah, he was.
So he doesn't actually know because like older sisters, I feel like are probably, they babied him. He doesn't know what it's like to be the other way around, where you got teenage girls and you're the older one. Mm-hmm. Tell him we're praying for him.
I'll let him know. Well, thank you so much, guys. It was great to join you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katherine. Thank you so much.
Bye now.
Okay, that was fantastic. What we're gonna do is, Rukshan, we won't stay for too long. We'll see if anyone wants to join us. So we're gonna stay only on free speech platforms. You can explain to them how that all works while I remove, if I can remember how to, the other platforms. So you can tell them what we're doing.
Shut off Facebook.
Yeah, I'm shutting off Facebook, YouTube.
Shut off YouTube.
So you can tell everyone where they can find us.
And you guys can find us if you want to continue watching, especially if you want to join in on the conversation via the Rebel News link by signing up. You can find us on the opposition.show website. You can also continue to watch on X at The Real Rukshan or at Osrail Arvi, and also on Rumble. We are still streaming. So going over to the free speech platforms, because, Facebook, YouTube, where else are we? Wherever else we are, a lot of these kind of mainstream controlled platforms